You know I sound horrible on YouTube, right?
Well, that's a good thing we're on Ustream.
Yes, I'm gonna win the biggest dork at SpaceUp DC or whatever, you know. Okay. Anyways, so are you here to check us out?
Yeah. No. I'm checking you up.
Okay.
Getting out of your hair.
So, I'm Jason Marsh. I'm the founder of the Space Movement, and we're supporting Copenhagen suborbitals, who, in the next, possibly next 2 days or the next week or so, will be launching the biggest amateur rocket from Denmark on a floating launch platform towed by their homemade submarine. You wish I was making this up.
Oh, it's kind of awesome.
It's kind of totally.
It is.
So let's move on to Copenhagen for a second here. They've been kind of working for the last 2 years, and this kind of started off as this wasn't so much their lifelong dream. It was kind of like, hey, we built this, now let's try building something bigger. Whereas the first thing they built was this homemade diesel submarine, which about 2.5 years ago they finally finished. This was actually their third submarine, but it was actually of a good size, and it was actually impressive enough that they had a picture of some American commander actually taking the helm of it and cruising it around the Copenhagen harbor. But,
wow.
Yeah, this is a cool thing about stuff. I got this dinosaur laptop here, but I got some interesting pictures from all of that. But what they are doing right now is the Heat 1-X. This is the rocket, and this is me. None of those bright things. And this is what they're shooting into, not quite orbit. The Tycho Brahe pod is basically the test bed for having a little cylinder for something to stuff a person in, parachutes, and all the all the support structures and the telemetry tracking and everything else that goes along with it. So this is what they're planning on launching within the next week, within the next few days, the next week or so. Hey, let me get more crowd here. Okay, that's over here. Okay, so you guys know about Copenhagen suborbitals, right? Yeah, you've been following them. Have you heard about them at all?
I'm sorry, I just missed that.
Copenhagen suborbitals?
Copenhagen suborbits.
Suborbitals.
Orbitals.
Yeah. Within the next, between August 31st and September 17th, they plan to launch the largest amateur suborbital rocket from a floating launch platform, which they'll be towing out with their own personal submarine.
And what is their intended orbit that they're going to try to? I mean, suborbital means that they have to fire in a particular direction.
They actually hope to mostly go straight up and come more or less straight back down, so they can actually perform the recovery as well. So it's going to be very much
in the landmass of which country?
Actually, it's going to be landing in the ocean.
Okay.
Over the last about 2 weeks ago, they had a demonstration of them taking the test pod and basically dumping it into the water and then having small boat recovery exercises. And they learned a few things from that, like all the antennas and the big arrow spike that sticks out of the top of it was actually a bit of a menacing challenge for somebody in a small rubber boat. But,
do they have a time of flight estimation?
I'm not sure how long it's going to remain in the air, but I do know the thrust time is roughly about 10 seconds.
10 seconds thrust.
No, 60.
60.
60. Their target is 60 seconds.
And was that total flight time, or is that just the?
No, that's the thrust. And the reason why is because they're going for a very low G environment. They don't want to exceed 4G.
Right. Yeah, as I did mention.
Target is 3G.
Yeah, when I talked to them, they said the rocket was basically scaled down to produce a relatively benign thrust of about 40 kilonewtons, which isn't a whole lot, but it's enough to lift a very small rocket like that. And lift that, but not actually accelerate it past the point of where it would start to, squish a person.
They are going to try to go supersonic, and that's why it's 60 seconds.
Okay. Okay, my information is probably about 2 or 3 weeks old. When I actually talked to Christian, he said 10 seconds.
10 seconds, okay. Might have changed recently. I just saw it on a rocket within the past
And
week.
the mission control is going to be on that ocean-going platform?
Yes, they're actually getting a lot of help from a lot of volunteer help from the local cities and local governments and local companies. Offering their time. There's like one of the news companies out there is donating a helicopter to hover around and hold a live feed.
Newsworthy event.
And the Danish Coast Guard is going to be there to help with the.
Who designed the rocket motor?
I think the rocket motor was designed by Peter Madsen and Christian Benstrom. I believe it's either Christian or Peter who's got the actual aerospace degree. But they do have about I'd say 24 people on their team with various backgrounds and this sort of thing. I'd have to actually go there and see like a whole dossier to see who knows what, but they have a fair amount of talent. But it's not like it's not like a huge room full of PhDs, but it's enough to get by. It's enough to get by with what they're doing. And they've done about 20. This is like going to be about the 20th test or the 21st test, and they've had a lot of other ones beforehand. They had one that ran off of paraffin, and one that ran off of a burnable epoxy grain. And both of those had relatively low, not quite as much thrust as what they're using nowadays, which is I think you mentioned like a high density molecular plastic or polyurethane based propellant or solid propellant. And let's see, I get the pictures up here. They actually have images of the mold they used to actually put it in there. It would be like a wagon wheel type configuration. I think 6 chambers around, going up axially through the thing. And that's probably because the thrust from the stuff isn't that great, isn't like as great as kerosene, liquid oxygen. So they have to get a little more surface area exposed to achieve the kind of thrust they want. Let's see.
Will they? Is their rocket going to have aerodynamic vanes for steering? Is it a fully guided rocket?
I was going to say it does have aerodynamic vanes, and I'm not sure about I'm not sure if it actually has any guidance systems at all besides passive guidance.
The current one is unguided.
Okay.
But it has fairly high margins of stability, of static stability.
But
they're part of what they're trying to do in this test is specifically trying to discover whether or not they need active guidance. That's one of the goals of the test.
Yeah, I do believe they have a radio or a radar telemetry device situated about right in front of the guy's face. This is probably like a testing thing. I'm pretty sure I would want to have a radar emitter right in front of my head if I was up in that cockpit. But they're probably using that to kind of get some testing data on how much the rocket's going to veer off course or veer off from a straight up and straight down approach. And also, if it does get lost, they'll at least know where it came from, which direction to look for.
So, how reusable is the rocket?
The rocket itself? That's a good question. I've noticed from it looks like it's pretty sturdily built, and it's probably the most efficient rocket because I can see them welding plate steel together to get everything together. But it looks like it might be fairly reusable. Of course, I'm not the foremost expert on whether it is like that or not. If I had my internet up and running, I'd probably just get on Skype and see if I can find him online and ask him quick.
The capsule is, for sure, because it
capsule
comes
is-
down on a parachute.
Yeah.
And you kind of want it to be, but I don't know if I actually don't know.
Does it like eject
the
the
boosters.
capsule and then does it like eject the capsule? And
Is it a single stage?
Yeah,
Single stage?
for this test, it is a single stage.
Yeah.
I think the later versions might have 2 stages, or it might just be a big single stage because they're not really concerned that much with making it into orbit rather than just going really high up. And you don't really need to perform staging to get really high up.
Is ESA involved with them or helping them in any way?
So yeah,
ESA, European Space Agency, are they helping them or something?
I should probably check on that, but I'm not sure if they're getting direct support from them in the way that a similar project would be getting support from NASA over here. As far as I know, this is mostly a very kind of a homegrown effort, and a lot of the help they get is from private individuals, local companies, and things of that nature. I mean, they do have to pay the bills for renting the site facility. But one thing I'm going to kind of segue into is that this is actually a very very inspiring thing for a lot of the citizens of Denmark and a lot of local cities around the launch area. And people, and if they need something, it usually just materializes overnight. Like, I mean, they said like, oh, we don't have enough VHF radios, and the next thing you know, there's whole boxes of VHF radios, mid condition, piled up, outside their loading dock. Here's a gift from some company over here, But I mean, but they do have to pay some bills. That the total amount they've expended over the last 2 years is roughly, I guess I'm going to guesstimate around $200,000 to $300,000. And this is a very low amount. I mean, the cost of the propellant itself, for the prices they're getting, is about $5,000. It's propellant plus the LOX, which they're getting at a pretty good discount from Air Liquide. Should probably show some pictures now. If you guys want to come back up and take a look at this, I don't have a projector or anything, or maybe I do, but
Are those on their website?
it is on the website. If you guys want to look up CopenhagenSuborbitals.com. This is Peter and Christian right here. Peter's one of the experts here.
Routing or something?
And this is the rocket itself, as it's standing on the platform. That's the Tycho Brahe module right there. And this is the Heat 1X rocket.
It does look like the capsule might break off.
It does.
Well, this is actually there's explosive bolts right here, so this will break away after it's reached its reached the peak. I was looking at the projector or something.
That's a phone.
I bet it's not the same code as it is for my other building that I probably different.
Credit start. Okay, you got
Did I give you the cipher?
passcode?
Yeah, the cipher. The password.
Oh, because it's not, it is a rental?
Yeah.
Oh, fine.
But okay, wait, just go straight to the thing. Just plug this right in.
This is the PD. Well, this is actually coming out from the PC. Yeah, but your stuff is inside. You want us to hack us? Hack it?
No, not the.
Screwdriver. Have screwdriver. We'll hack.
Probably my screwdriver today.
Let me try one more code that I think out.
Yeah, you're in. Or not?
Incorrect.
Oh, okay. Probably expired because of the.
Give it the old college try.
But anyways, let's talk about rockets. So these guys are doing something that's it's really cool. It's getting a whole lot of people actually interested in space over in Denmark, because you don't really hear about it over here so much, although we did have a little bit of media coverage after somebody realized that they're launching a rocket, the biggest one, from their submarine.
That they built? Yeah.
That actually made the news and got hit around on Wired and a lot of other of the smaller news sites like that. And I've been part of a particular forum. You probably know about it. And some of the people on there are also part of this forum. Although the perception is that they're part of the Copenhagen Suborbitals is part of this forum as well, but that's not really the case. It's just this is like a little commonplace that we've kind of intersected at. And because of that, they post information about their project in that forum, and a lot of us have gotten more first-hand details on what's been going on. I'll bring that up in a second here, but
What's the form?
what's the what?
What's the form, Jason?
The forum? It's the Something Awful forums,
Oh, okay.
which most people probably haven't heard of, but it is pretty sizable actually. I'd say about 600,000 people or so on there. Maybe it's 200,000 or something.
I only had passing.
Yeah, he's like a cousin of the Something Awful forums. And this is their submarine, by the way. They've named it the UC-3 Nautilus. This is what he commutes to. This is what Peter Madsen commutes to working on some days. Going across. Instead of taking the car around, he just drives from one side of the harbor to the other.
Do they just appear out of the ocean to go to work? That's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
We rented the place.
Here's their mission patches, which you can actually buy these on their Cafe Press site. If it was so interested. I do like their logo for the heat market right there. Let's go back up to boosters. We have a video of some of their tests right here.
So do they have orbital aspirations afterward?
It's a possibility. Going orbital is considerably more difficult
You
because
need a lot more propellant.
sure, you need a lot more speed. I mean, getting up there is that's one thing. But you're just going to fall right back down. You have to go into about 70,600 miles per hour to maintain a minimal low Earth orbit velocity, and that's actually pretty. I mean, you can get really high up for a modestly sized rocket, but then again, if you don't get up to that actual velocity, that actual tangential velocity, then you're just going to be heading right straight back down in a matter of
How much capital do they have in their company that would allow them to expend so much, volatile chemicals? I mean, the cost of a launch must be astronomical, from just going up and down to actually achieving orbit.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much.
Do they require $5 million, $10 million?
I mean, well, they probably enjoy the kind of money sitting around. I mean, so far, as I mentioned, they've built all this over 2 years with out-of-pocket expenses of only about $200,000. That's with all of them chipping in and with donations and everything else. So I think that point really does bear reiterating. In fact, they're making a rocket, the biggest amateur rocket, and they've done it all largely on donations.
But if they're successful in their suborbital,
I mean, yeah, they do have a lineup of rockets, and the next one's a little bigger, the next one's a little bigger and taller.
Yeah, they're probably leading to a commercial startup, which is just simply, you don't just build rockets in successive order unless you've got a goal. I mean, ultimately somebody has to pay for all of this.
they could do.
So the intellectual property that they,
It's open.
Well, but that's the point. Somebody hasn't paid for all this. People have donated it.
Yeah, well, it's not that they have to pay for all of it. It's the fact that this is actually a really cheap rocket. And the cost of the propellant, from Christian himself, says it's roughly $5,000. That's the propellant plus the oxidizer. The metals, that's not too much to ask right there for pressed steel and also doing pressure testing. I mean, one of the big setbacks they had recently was one of their LOX tanks was scavenged by Romanian copper thieves, and next thing you know, they left it outside overnight. Next thing you know, it's gone. They had to go and rebuild a brand new cryogenic tank. Not sure if it's like a double walled or basically just a pressurized tank.
But answering your question, I think they're releasing all the hardware with details as far as the European ITAR allows them.
Okay, so we don't know what the real cost is of the materials and the work.
Yeah, but I think you said before that what's the cost of the whole thing.
The cost of everything. And I'm not talking about the rocket itself here. It's like the cost of them renting the facilities, which is like about either $2,000 or $4,000 a month, and over 2 years, plus propellant for say 20 rocket tests, which I'm going to peg at $5,000 for each one, and throw in an extra few, like an extra $50,000 here or there for miscellaneous costs, and everything else was basically donated, and roughly it came out to about $200,000, and Christian basically said, yeah, that sounds about right. So, I mean, I haven't seen like their whole, I haven't seen their record keeping, to that kind of detail.
Ultimately, a rocket development plan would, increase the amount of, skills for a particular group of persons who would then have the credentials necessary to go to a venture capitalist and say, like Elon Musk basically did.
I don't think they've talked about their plans beyond.
No, not publicly. They wouldn't.
Building their sort of the biggest rocket. Jason, can I ask you a favor?
Sure.
Could you put up their page that has all of their rockets on it?
Sure.
All of their currently existing announced roadmap?
I think it's on this page here, actually.
I was thinking that if they succeeded suborbital, maybe their government would support them with a fair amount of funding.
ESA is something for that.
Yeah, it's
But I
an
don't think
interesting question. We're all familiar with the U.S.'s licensing process. Jason, are you aware if there was any licensing issues, or are they in the process?
There is.
As I understand, I mean, outside of the U.S., ITAR isn't such a big deal, and the fact that they're basically doing this on their own and they're not really selling to anything, they're not really, besides just publishing what they're doing.
I'm sorry, I meant to be the license for the launch. Is Denmark, the government of Denmark, the licensing authority in this case?
Yes.
I do believe so, and I'm pretty sure they're happy to have a launch because it's probably, they don't get a whole lot of them over there.
In fact, they've been working pretty closely with both the Danish equivalent of the Coast Guard and the Danish equivalent of the Department of Defense. And they're getting a lot of support from those groups in terms of, they're launching from a military range in the middle of the Baltic Sea.
And
They're
also
hoping to land there too.
Are they gonna be charged for that range? Because I know in the US, you know, when an amateur group tried to approach a DoD operated range, you know, they would be told, you know, in certain terms, that you can't, you know, go away.
Well, I think the big difference between that and over there
That's
is
not
over
even-
here, these guys actually have some little bit of pride in their rocket business now. And it's actually the national pastime to watch what these guys are doing and help cheer them on. And the government is more than happy to help them out in any way, shape, or form. You know, by lending support from the Coast Guard and you know for the recovery mission and all that, and giving them permission to use the range in the first place, and also renting out their facility, which is basically a former naval construction yard, I think. It's either a naval construction yard or some kind of shipbuilding yard. But it's a big place, whole lot of concrete, whole lot of open spaces, and you know, it doesn't matter if anything gets burned too badly.
What's the, excuse me, but what's the latitude of the launch site?
Approximately 52 degrees or 56 degrees. I actually did look this up because I was wondering, you know, if they launched from there, would they have an easier time of reaching the International Space Station? And it's pretty close. And so it's somewhere in the 50.
And do you happen to know Vandenberg?
I'm sorry?
Vandenberg's latitude? That's about 70 degrees, right?
No, it's, Vandenberg is, 34, I think.
Latitude?
Vandenberg is down in Florida, I assume, right?
Vandenberg's California.
Just north of Santa
California,
Barbara.
Okay. Still California, that's probably that's closer to the equator than these guys are. These guys are closer to, I guess, our latitude. I'm from Alaska, so I tend to think like 50 degrees on up. So, and that's also roughly around the same area as Baikonur, you know, where the frozen North Pole is, you know, Russian rockets.
So would they, if I ask the question, would they become a competitor to the low-cost launch industry in the U.S.? It would, if they achieved all the milestones, goals, and you know, sooner or later, their own funds, you know, became to the point where they had to say recapitalize and say, can bring in additional people to do better, bigger missions. Would they become a bona fide competitor to the low-cost launch industry? Could you conceivably conceive of a time when they would be that?
That's a possibility. I mean, I can't speak for Peter or Christian, but you know, if you want to start talking about having payloads that have to get there in one piece and all that, I mean, then it does kind of raise the whole paperwork aspect, and it does make it a little less fun and enjoyable. And that's one of the key things about this is they're actually having a whole lot of fun doing
They
this.
are not involved in any way in carrying any biological, chemical payloads or any kind of those things. So as far as we go for now, they are not.
For now.
They haven't even committed to doing anything long-term past amateur or commercial or government or anything. They haven't announced anything beyond that picture that you saw there.
No, my question is,
Would they have the capability to do that? Probably.
yeah, whatever is on a website, you know, it's just a bunch of words on HTML which do not reflect actually the reality of the business plan.
It might not be.
The website is really just whitewash for any kind of business plan that they have, business objective. Sooner or later, somewhere in their organization will come up with this idea. Hey, let's capitalize on this thing, and
They might.
yeah. So, in a sense, that if we have a nascent private, nascent commercial space transportation industry growing in the United States, we have to look at the global competitors.
They might.
In the next 4 to 5 years.
In the same way that South Korea's CNS space might be.
India's ISRO just grew up because all the support of the engineers were over here.
ISRO is a government organization. So.
ISRO is a government organization that didn't have its own, rocket development program.
And is ISRO working on anything suborbital?
Israel has matured past the point of suborbital, and it's launched into
Yes,
geo and also lunar projects.
right, but they don't have any suborbital, they're not interested in competing in suborbital, right?
I believe that they have their smaller rockets that are they can achieve orbit. They've already passed the
Yes.
stage. They can achieve orbit.
I knew that,
Right.
but having achieved orbit, like, I'm thinking folks like Orbital Sciences, or Orbital.
Oh, I mean our orbital
Yeah,
sciences.
I mean, these guys primarily go to orbit, but they also have expressed from time to time interest in suborbital
Yeah.
vehicles.
Anybody with own intellectual own intellectual capability to produce a rocket engine that has, a proven flight profile can decide to cut it off, at a
Okay.
particular point, and just simply, be a suborbital flight rather than.
In the same sense, these guys can go after actual commercial business. And you asked the question, I think it's a fair question. Is there any indication that they will?
I don't know. I'm just very interested to find out that, wow, this is so guys in advance. And,
Okay, I was going to move this along real quick before anybody gets too bored here. But if everyone wants to come up and take a look here, I have some pictures to show what they were doing just last week. Whenever they actually put before that they assembled the rocket onto the platform, and just last week they put the platform into the water and moored it to their submarine. Of which, and then at this point they realized they suddenly needed a blue light welded to the front of their submarine to actually comply with Denmark naval laws. So. And the next thing you know, they find a working blue light with somebody else to help weld, and they got that straightened out in a matter of days. This is the rocket itself, and you can kind of see some people with scale down here. You guys want to come take a look at this? Rocket.
Big rocket.
I'm not sure.
I've seen it, so.
Picture from far from the base looking up. And there's where the person goes right there. You can see people on the ground here at the same scale. And this launch platform they built was basically just welded out of plate steel, which was drawn from like a Google SketchUp project. I mean, if you go back far enough in this thread, you'll see the original, pen on cocktail napkin sketches of, let's do this and have something that looks like this for the launch rail. And And yeah, it just kind of kept going. And it's not a complicated thing. It's basically a whole bunch of sheet metal and a whole bunch of rolled steel and a little bit of pressure testing. And the next thing you know, they have something that actually works and functions as a rocket. So this kind of goes. I wouldn't say it goes against saying you have to be a rocket scientist to work on rockets, but it does kind of say that it's not really that difficult to do, and it doesn't have to be that expensive to do either, as they're quite honestly demonstrating right here. Now I mentioned that the Copenhagen suborbitals, they spent $200,000 over the last 2 years. Does anybody know how much we spent on ringtones?
Mm-hmm.
2008, $750 million. That's $750 million. And the year before that, it was like about $800 million. And it went down a little bit. That's still ringtones. Those things that cost like 50 cents or a few bucks here and there. I mean, if you spent like a few bucks here and there, what you would spend on ringtones towards something like this, they would have several orders of magnitude more money to play around with. And that's, as I mentioned with the open space movement, that's kind of what we're doing, taking funding aggregation and showing, putting it towards something cool, then publishing the results and saying, thanks to funding, we did this and this and this and this and this. And this is one of the first projects we're planning to support in that region. Kind of cool little video here showing.
And that rocket has been fired, or not
Yeah,
yet?
rocket motors have been fired a number of times.
Hmm.
But,
If you want the answer to that.
I think this is their first. The rocket motors have been fired. This is their first flight. I think. Is that right? that
Oh,
right?
I see, okay.
I think they've actually launched, well,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they've actually launched one yet. But I think they launched a smaller one that looked like a sounding rocket. That actually did go up in the air. But it was, about this big around, whereas this is like about this big around. So.
And also, some of these guys have some significant prior high-power rocketry experience.
I believe some of them do, yes. I think it was either Peter or Christian who actually does have an aerospace, or actually has a degree in aerospace. This should be going faster. One thing I found out is that over in Denmark, they actually speak English.
Hmm.
And they kind of use it interchangeably. I was like, do we need a translator to talk to you guys at all? No.
As opposed to what, Klingon?
This was a test from Macy's.
I've seen these.
Which one was
We
this?
took a look at this stuff at the
March?
This was the May 16th test.
May 16 test? Okay, so that's with the new propellant combination.
I think this might be a different version of the rubber test.
This was the rubber test.
We have Miko, that's what he's saying, and then you cut off.
Wow.
It's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, but also a lot of oscillation.
A lot of oscillation.
Theory.
Huge amount of oscillation.
I'm not sure if that stuttering sound you heard was like an artifact of the video itself, or if that's what it actually sounded like. Because it seemed kind of weird to have it,
The guy who was posting on a rocket,
It's definitely real.
This is half a frame per second, or 50 frames per second. So why would it be like that?
So that was close to about 15-second test right there, I guess.
one of the guys on a rocket from the project said that they were aware that there's a significant oscillation and they think they have a fix for it. Post this test.
And you can kind of see in the video there, it seems like it burns really good and it stops. Yeah, we were kind of asking the questions when we first saw this. It was like, isn't that kind of like a jerky ride, And, I think they said they were kind of working on it. Although this was, from May, so that's quite a while, or a little way back.
That's good.
Just keep going enough of that, can we? There's a newer video talking about about the assembly of the thing. I'm not sure if it's on here though. Let me check real quick. Yeah, this is part of the part of the module itself. This is the area where the parachute stays in, and above here is the actual.
I can't believe I just found the code,
And
and it's completely obvious.
what was it?
4321. You
It's
wish
the
to
same
put it
number as
on-
my briefcase.
you want to put it on the screen?
Yeah, what did you do? Go ahead and
Yeah,
transfer.
Let's try to.
Screen's up there.
Let's see. There's a pump down here.
Down.
Remember those robots?
Oh, we got
He's got a real control right there on the left.
You don't have to move your laptop. What's that? Yeah, you want to bring your laptop over. Turn it on.
So this will be the only breakout session with AV support.
Yes.
Quick tweaks.
Technical difficulties, stand by.
It's not technical difficulties, it's technical success. We're good.
So F-Secure antivirus is going to buy some advertising time on the rocket structure itself, because it's from the Scandinavian countries.
There's a switch deep inside.
So the switch has to be on, but then it shuts up after a while. But if it's moved, it's a
And then you smack it, and then
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's operational. So you want the lights on?
it's right over there in front, by the door.
Those engine test videos will be a little bit more thrilling, no?
Shut the front ones off completely. There you go.
Don't do anything quite yet. Let's make sure it's not the laptop signal.
There's a computer in and monitor out, and engine in and monitor out.
PC, laptop, there you go.
You got to do dual image on your dual monitor on your laptop.
Pause it one more time. Because this is the right setting now.
Yeah, you shouldn't touch that. I mean,
This should already be set up in the
okay,
way, so
here,
this is
let me just
laptop.
okay. I'm just gonna like no, it doesn't matter. It's a hardware, right?
Actually,
Is there a video monitor for you? Okay, just cycle it until it syncs up.
Now
Okay.
I'm just going to this. This section goes into this.
Okay. I'm just see monitor out. Monitor in.
Yeah, I kind of figured that.
Okay. So
Switch that.
yeah. Okay, how many cables do we have here? We have two edges. Yeah, the other end.
Probably.
Okay, this is swap it.
Okay.
And this is the other end of this cable. Okay, give it to me. Sorry. This is connected to. I'm sorry. Okay, so can you switch to the outside and we'll be that outside?
Yeah, trying to anything.
Monitor out.
I think my laptop's having a bad day, actually.
Right. Do we have somebody else's laptop?
Do we have another laptop?
I have another laptop. It's a little bit embarrassing, but
Anything that can give a video signal?
possible.
Dongle for VGA.
You can use my laptop.
Yeah.
There's no display port input over there.
We can just use the laptop.
You got the only way you could get to online is if you get into the security.
No, we here come to your laptop. That's it.
Let's try this.
Okay.
PC,
It is a PC.
nothing against Linux.
Nothing against Linux. Most of my desktops are Windows. But unfortunately, this is my beer PC, and that gets operating systems installed on it whenever, and whatever it happens to be.
Okay, let me just quickly just take a peek. Is I think the monitor okay, that's fine. If it doesn't, we're going to just swap it, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead. Got it.
Yep.
Yay!
Line.
Yeah, except of course I
Bad.
can't see what I'm actually doing.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah,
I
we're live.
can't see where I'm going.
You can see it here. I think you can this should be able to be turned on so that I don't know why.
Are you on the, let me try one thing, this might not be it, but,
Okay, go left. Go
hang on.
There you go. You're in the box right now, so just
Do you have audio?
type in the URL.
Yes, but I don't know where.
Okay, all right.
He said, it's over here.
Maybe the speakers on that.
Yeah.
There should be some eyes right now.
The only interesting question is, I can't see what I'm doing.
Yes, I'm trying to find a separate cable for this.
Okay, so we're still there, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We can just see this. What is it?
So Copenhagen suborbitals.com.
Can you spell it quick?
Did I misspell it somewhere?
No, it looks fine.
That's good.
Like, do something.
Suborbitals.com. Yeah, it's coming.
Okay. This is a,
Hey,
this is a
all right.
Windows machine, so I'm not saying anything about anything.
Let's click on the spacecraft right there.
Is it, are they doing a countdown right now because it's 30th? Are they on the pad and they're doing a countdown right now?
The window opens on the 30th, and it's a possibility they might launch on the 31st, and the window's going to last all the way till, like, say, the September 17th. So this is much better than my screen laptop.
Yeah, I don't care. You want to talk about these, or do you want me to just scroll down? What would you like to do?
So this is the actual component, or the actual cavity where they have the parachutes been. At least one of these is. I know on one of the other videos actually shows some tests of the parachutes and the explosive bolt delivery system. Let's see. And as you can see, this is pretty simple technology. It's basically just a big pressure shell, and it's just light enough to work as this. Oh, and if you guys can see this right here, this is really ingenious, I think. They got one of those little carts that just turned upside down and use the rollers to set the thing into.
I like it.
And just like roll. I think I have a better picture of it here too. I mean, you don't need money to accomplish shit like this. I apologize. This is basically where the person will be sitting, and they have this giant. This actually got pulled from some submarine project, and they decided, hey, let's make a rocket out of this. I can only guess that's how this whole thing got started, but this is basically a very thick thing of acrylic, whatever they would use on a small submersible vehicle, which basically was its original purpose. On the top here, they've actually welded kind of glued a giant little metal dome, and from here they'll be screwing on this metal aerospike, which helps create a bow shock of for aerodynamic pressure away from the actual canopy, from the actual cockpit itself. So I'm going to scroll down, and here's some internal structure of this.
That's the aerospike there.
Yeah.
Schedule.
Now the person will be sitting in kind of this position right here, pretty well folded in. And thanks to ITAR, they can't actually get a spacesuit, so what they're having to make do with is a big pressure suit, to keep all the blood from pooling in the person's legs. Which I guess that's okay with an ITAR, but they can't actually purchase a spacesuit from us, which is, it's one of those things.
How is that a weapon?
Yeah, I know.
It's not, it's an ITAR is an expanded definition that encompasses all space technologies under category.
I work for Northrop Grumman. I understand what it really says, but what they're supposed to be is international traffic and arms regulation.
You might as well include PlayStation 3s on the
I
list.
guess since we're streaming, we can say this out loud. We have the endorsement by the Secretary of Defense of the United States to reform our ITAR system, so you're on the bandwagon.
Yeah, Mr. Gates was talking about that recently, and I think there was also another Senator Sherman or Thurman, Senator Thurman, I think.
Congress better than
Yeah.
the last one.
There has been some growing support for ITAR reform, and if our little open space movement program gets a whole lot of people behind it, then that's one of those little side projects we'd like to work on.
What is the official relationship between OSN and Copenhagen suborbitals?
They're their own little thing, as you can obviously see right here. They're making rockets and sending them up. We're not necessarily tied to any specific project. We're basically a development environment that supports projects and supports established players like these guys, or more established players like, say, Armadillo Aerospace or X-Core, or even Bigelow or somebody like that. I mean, if we can't provide them technology or things like that, we can always provide them money. or at least a market for providing the services. Yeah, it's Christian right there again. But so basically, we're trying to find everybody out there who's working for space, working in some manner towards space, and finding a way to give them a common ground for support. And some of that support is in the way of basically engineering development environments, or aggregated funding towards their projects. This grant we're working on for Copenhagen suborbitals is one example of that. It is our first example. It's basically the first thing to show that yes, we are if you send us money, that we'll actually put it towards something good. And that's basically the whole point of this, and showing, establishing a track record.
Tell me what your domain is, what the URL is?
It'll be punch in test.openspacemovement.org. This isn't a very good example. Yeah, that's about right. This isn't a very good example though, because we're still working on some of the stuff. Like that, my developers are I don't know what they're doing. But let me log in real quick, and I'll show you a little demonstration of something that's kind of cool. So sneak peek. So one of the little functions we're trying to do with the open space movement is finding a way to have like a little skill profile for everybody who logs into the site. And this is kind of this isn't really all that sophisticated or anything, but it's a good way of just telling people, here's what I'm good at, and here's what you can ask me questions about. And it also has another function, the fact that the same taxonomy of people's skills can also be used to tag questions and requests and things like that. So if somebody puts out a request for, say, a project review, they can tag it with certain things, and it'll automatically be delivered to everybody on the site with those corresponding areas of expertise. Right, this is basically what I'm talking about right here. So if I wanted to add a skill to my little profile, sorry, science related stuff. If the taxonomy looks kind of dumb, it's because I made it up all by myself, just kind of guessing where things would go. We still have to work on that. So let's say I'm good at organic chemistry. Let's put that in there. So now let's say somebody else asks a question, like a regular question and answer type request, and they're not sure how to answer it, but they do know it involves say organic chemistry. So they put that on the title using a very similar interface to this, and that request goes out, and that request gets delivered to everybody on the site with that. Therefore, in the next 5 minutes, everybody who gets this kind of dogpiles on the original question and starts throwing out answers into it. And this is actually something that could be really useful in kind of accelerating the tempo of how fast questions get answered, and also directing the most qualified people towards questions. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on this? I think this might be actually kind of useful here.
In an earlier session, I had actually raised the issue, and it's on the transcription notes, I'm sure, that I had asked if there's a way to give a voice to students, or a platform for students who are going through the middle school, high school, early college years, of trying to determine who they can talk to that will be able to give them advice as to what their career choices could be, vis-a-vis their potential education requirements in both directions. I want to study this, what can I do? And I want to do that, what do I have to study? But to do that, I described a program that I created, an environment that I created called Learning Resource Navigator, where we actually broke it down as per standards of learning, and we filled in the content that if you wanted to learn about physics, and if you wanted to learn about Newtonian physics, and if you wanted to learn about orbital motions, you would need to, go through these course modules and subsequent lessons. But since you've got a taxonomy of the knowledge tree.
This isn't necessarily a knowledge tree. This is
Well,
more of
it has the,
professional areas of expertise. There's a bit of a difference in the two. You know, and I found that out the hard way when I tried to make one big taxonomy, and I realized, where the hell does this go? And then I had to start breaking it up and saying, this one's for people's skills and areas of expertise, and this one's for things related to projects, and this one's for the other one for actual areas of knowledge would be more of the knowledge-based section of the site. And one of the
but still, if you're, if one of your goals is to enlarge the universe of people involved into the space, say, space engineering topics, or for want of a better phrase, if they felt they wanted to participate, and they got onto your site and they wanted to explore their options, who to talk to, what to talk to, there's a learning curve.
There is, and we actually have that planned out as there already exists a whole lot of information on the internet. I mean, on the internet or within NASA's databases, and we recognize, it's a good thing, but it's also not good enough for the same reason you mentioned, that it's a whole lot to dive into at once, and it's not very compelling to have to learn it by yourself.
Sure.
So one of the things we can do is kind of a make work project for all of our happy little minions, is basically taking a lot of these existing data dumps in the knowledge base wiki section, and then start annotating things and adding metadata, and creating little little chains of prerequisites on if you want to learn about this, you should probably check this out and this out first, or if you have a question about this. If somebody has a question in the forums, they'll be able to access the relevant stuff on the wiki site and say, go read this first, then come back to this discussion. It is as much information as we can in one place, and it makes it as easy as possible to kind of reference that or cross-reference that and to navigate it in the first place. Obviously this isn't all going to be created by myself on my own spare time. This is basically the framework for everybody, for allowing a whole lot of other people to do that on a very large scale. So don't be surprised if it doesn't look very compelling at the moment.
What is your participation level at this point?
As I mentioned, we have like about 700 people or so, and mostly they're waiting for this to be released, and this should be up and running in say another week or so.
Is it a pretty international, diverse participation at this point?
I would say that about say a fifth to a sixth of our people are not U.S. citizens. So
okay, my thought on this is a space policy statement, I guess, is that open source movements, if they take off big. And so if you do realize your vision, I think you have a responsibility, I think, to not only to impart knowledge, which is enabling for people to do things. Maybe you want to consider having some sort of part of your mandate that you also provide education and guidance to make sure that people are responsible. So, for example, would you have a legal portion on your site that talks about the UN space debris guidelines, things like responsible use of rocketry. The Amateur Rocket Society in the U.S. has principles, and they make you go through tests and things like that. So there might be part of an obligation on your part as your movement expands and starts to reach out and influence more people across the globe, that you also have a concurrent message of being a responsible space actor.
yes. I mean, we will need space lawyers.
Education about it.
And education about it is hard.
Yes. So we will need space lawyers, and also, as you mentioned, throwing up the information by itself, that's one good thing, But that doesn't really have the incentive to get people to read it in the first place. But if we start running into situations where we might be running into those laws, or possibly running afoul of them, it would be good of us to actually have people on board go through and actually look at them and help interpret. I mean, actually have legal people as a label pool for figuring some of this stuff out. Legal people just as important as mathematicians, AutoCAD developers, people who have specific knowledge of a certain area that can kind of band together and help everybody else out whenever questions arise.
Shout out to Barry. He's the right guy.
Okay. I was talking to him quite a bit yesterday. Baron Zoka, is it? Okay. Baron Zoka is from the Space Frontier Foundation. And we talked quite a bit, some length yesterday about actually working, or having them and the OSM work together over the next, maybe over the next, early as the next 2 weeks or so. So more to come on that, but probably not in this competition. That was time for us to go. 3:57. Okay, well, certainly need some fresh air anyways, but anyways, I guess you guys actually stayed in your seats. Thank you. Is there any questions before we go?
How much funding are you actually needing to, really like?
Well, I can show that real quick. So as I mentioned, it roughly costs $5,000 for propellants to make one of those launch tests. And coincidentally, we also decided on making a $5,000 grant towards Copenhagen suborbitals, just because, because we're both sharing the same little discussion area and both kind of knew each other. And we're like, hey, let's work together as our big first project. The first thing to kick things off and show that we're actually spending it on rockets rather than roofs and booze. So, but this is where we're at so far, $1,500. It's not a lot. We've had people chip in, anywhere from $2 to $300, and it's just been kind of working its way up over the last month. Of course, we had very small exposures.
Could I just bother you to go to amsat.org?
Amsat.org?
Yeah, I just want to compare the models, just as a point, because I'm involved in that. So if you look at the just look at the for example, sat status. And I would encourage people to look at the symposium coming up now. Okay, now look at all Oscar satellites. Just click on the link called All Oscar Satellites. But if you can scroll down a bit before you do that, and just take a look at the chart. No, just scroll down, please, the window. Right. Yeah. Go ahead. Those are the current satellites. Like everything with the O dash is an Oscar carrying satellite with a number. But there may be individual spacecraft with individual names that are not accorded the Oscar designation because they are built amateur satellites, but they don't carry the Oscar transponder. But you have AOs, you have VOs, you have SOs. SO67 is the latest one by South African University, which donated a portion of its spacecraft for carrying an Oscar transponder. And anybody can use it according to their published schedule, and it is carrying actually telemetry data from the scientific payload. But each spacecraft is an individual project. These are the operational ones. Look at the history. If you can just go back up and say all Oscar satellites, and I'm going to come to the, summary. Just scroll down, please. And I think it's easier to do if you go back up. The list is pretty long. Hit the satellite chronology. Yeah, to the right. Yeah, click on that, please. And look at the first, come down, 1961 was the first satellite launched with contributed resources, built in a garage, taken by hand in a suitcase, to a plane, to a launch pad, and popped up for 4.5 kilograms. Scroll down.
Lasts for about a month and a half.
Just hit page down several times if you will. Keep on going. It's a regular occurrence. And every one of those projects that is described there, the people are still around, turning around. They were all proposed and designed, developed, and initiated and launched and operated and then ultimately retired by user contributions from radio ham operators on a non-profit, contract basis. So you've got good examples there. I mean, open source movement just means that the technology for building a mission. But this is actually, I'm going to say this is actually open source because all of the technical documents required to build every one of those satellite projects is available in the AMSAT journal archives, and it's a formal publication. So you can be a AMSAT member, but you don't have to be a ham radio operator. But you cannot use the AMSAT Oscar satellite, orbiting satellite carrying amateur radio unless you're a ham radio call sign. You can build it, you can fly it, you can build it, you can launch it, but you can't use it unless you're a ham radio operator. So it depends. Some people are interested in building of the stuff. So my question to you now would be, given that since the 1960s there have been significant amateur spacecraft designing and development activities, how is the open source movement differentiate? How is it different from perhaps the work of the AMSAT, which is worldwide?
No, so I would say it's. I mean, I think we can definitely work together. And one of the things we can do right off the bat is help provide some, I don't want to say publicity, but help get the word out about what these guys are already doing. Because I didn't know about the AMSATs myself until just now. And I mean, I've heard of smaller ones, but I didn't know there's like a whole collection of them like that. But anyways, this is one of the things we can offer is if people were so inclined to use our services is, for project development and component tracking and peer review of specific components and also funding of specific components for development services. We could help them out by turning their little garage operations into something that's more easily works on the web with other developers, from different areas.
Or vice versa, with their knowledge base, with the knowledge base and their engineering expertise, I think your projects would be successful from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of things to learn in the business of building a satellite.
And people like this too would also be able to come into our site and take positions.
If they wish. I mean, they're doing it for two objectives: enrichment and education. Specifically, that's the code of the ham radio operator, literally from the ITU definition. So all they are doing is they want to utilize radio communication to a object at high altitude to reach across the rest of the world. So that is what they're believing now. In the process of that achieving that goal, they want to design a spacecraft. If they could fly a balloon, which they have done several times, then no big deal. Call Kentucky to Virginia any time of the day. But if you want to go from Virginia to the Marshall Islands or the Pacific, then yeah, you need a spacecraft to really attract it. Rather than pay money, borrow a service or two from somebody. But you still get your spacecraft done. You still do orbital mechanics, you still do launches, you still do mission planning, you still do the orbits, you still do orbital estimates. And if you do click on the links, you will find actual real-time data dumps and real-time mission control. So there are many NOCs in operation today that actually have ground tracking facilities because of these satellite projects. All operational. So one of the most innovative projects has come online, which is I think out of Europe actually, where a federated constellation of ground stations will be used to track groups of satellites using the same communication protocol. So as they pass over, one project to another will assist in the 24/7 control over orbit, over mission.
Now is it like a published?
I'm sorry, what?
Yes,
Sorry?
Caleb, do you have a message?
Time is completely up. No, not even a break is
Okay.
left.
So you didn't bring any chocolate for us?
You can't eat chocolate in here.
Yeah, but you could eat it out there.
Jason, I think the message.
I'm not allowed to take chocolate. It comes off of my thing.
Maybe that you want to take away from this.
And my mom said no more.
There's a lot of folks out there that share your guys' passion. And one thing that I've noticed is that the space community is very fractured. There's lots and lots of movements. I mean, as much as we all love space, it seems like we can never build up this massive consensus to overtake some of the policies that are put in place that we're dissatisfied with. And so, as you grow your organization, make sure you build alliances with some of the other open source kinds of flavored things out there. And AMSAT is definitely one you want to reach out to.
Because they usually write share.
But yeah, as much as it's very fractured, it wouldn't really work to say, hey, all of you, come work with us. That's what I mean. It would be helpful, but it wouldn't really incent